In January of 2023, the nation was focused on the low country of South Carolina, the site of the state's most notorious criminal trial since Susan Smith murdered her children in 1994. It was the Murdock family murders and the trial of Alec Murdaugh. Court TV cameras were inside the courtroom for every dramatic moment, but other media organizations like Netflix were telling the story of the Murdocks. And in their series, they went beyond the murders of Paul and Maggie. They also took a look at the unsolved case of Stephen Smith, a young man found dead in the road in the Low Country. While covering that story, Alec Murdaugh's surviving son, Buster, was talked about, and there was speculation about his possible involvement. Buster was never named as a suspect by law enforcement or implicated for the killing, and now he is loudly proclaiming his innocence by filing lawsuits against the organizations he believes defamed him. Tonight, we'll take a look at the lawsuit and the still unsolved case of Stephen Smith and investigate what impact this will have on justice in the Low Country. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us. This hour, we go back to the Low Country of South Carolina. It was a big case. It was a huge case. It captivated the nation. It captivated, I think, the entire community about this case. Everywhere I went, people were talking about, oh, that lawyer from South Carolina, Alec Murdaugh was his name, and became very infamous after being convicted of murdering his son and his wife. But during all of this, there were talks of other stories and cases from the Low Country. And one of them was Stephen Smith, an unsolved case of a young man who was found dead in the middle of a country road. Like, how did that happen? Why was that never solved? And a lot of questions began circulating about it. And some of the streaming services and other networks were talking about it as well. And one name that came up was Buster Murdaugh's name, the surviving son of Alec Murdaugh. Now, Buster's never been named as a suspect or implicated by law enforcement in this, but there was talk, there was rumors, there was this. Stephen Smith's own mother didn't point the finger at Buster Murdaugh, but at this point now, things have changed dramatically, and we're going to talk about those developments. But I want to go back one step. For those of you not familiar with Stephen Smith's case, his death, and the investigation, Julie Janae has that story for us tonight.
Hampton County 911, where's your emergency?
Hello, I was going down Crocketville Road. I see somebody laying out.
The body of 19-year-old Stephen Smith is found during the early morning hours, lying in the middle of a rural Hampton County, South Carolina, 2-lane road.
I ain't moving or nothing like that, but somebody going to hit him.
Stephen was a graduate of Wade Hampton High School and was studying to be a nurse. He was also openly gay in a community where that wasn't very common.
I thought that from the beginning, you know, that it was done out of hate.
It was not immediately clear to investigators what caused Stephen's death.
There is no body trauma other than to the head area.
He had a dislocated right shoulder, and then his eye socket was broke. The whole back of his head was crushed.
There is some scrapes and scratches on his left and right arm, on his knuckles, some across his face.
Later that morning, police found Stephen Smith's car about 3 miles away, parked on the side of the road.
The car was locked. He had his phone and his key in his pocket, but then he left his wallet. So if you're going to go get gas, why would you leave your wallet in the car?
The medical examiner ruled Stephen's death the result of a hit and run, a finding that shocked his mother and the investigators.
There was no damage anywhere. There was no debris in the road.
Does not appear to be, in my opinion, struck by a vehicle.
As police tried to determine what exactly had happened, Sandy Smith, the mother of Stephen and his twin sister Stephanie, claimed Buster Murdaugh's name kept coming up.
some of his friends came over, him and Stephanie's friends, and they said, you know, it was them Murdock boys that did this. You know, we never thought that. But then it just kept coming over and over and over again.
Investigators never figured out how the rumors began, and Buster Murdock strongly denied any involvement, calling them baseless, and said his heart went out to Stephen's family. The investigation into Stephen's death stalled for 6 years, until June of 2021, when the murders of Maggie and Paul Murdock thrust the case into the national spotlight. It was then that SLED reopened the investigation, and Stephen Smith's death was officially ruled a homicide.
So now we go to today's huge development, which is the lawsuits filed by Buster Murdock. Defamation. Take a look at who he is suing. Warner Brothers, Discovery Inc., Blackfin Inc. for producing Murdock Murders, The Deadly Dynasty. He's suing Warner Media, Campfire Studios for Low Country, The Murdock Dynasty. And Netflix, Cinemark, Michael DeWitt Jr., editor of the Hampton Guardian, and Gannett, the publisher of that publication, for Murdock Murders, A Southern Scandal. So what happens now? What impact will all this have? What is the latest from the Low Country? Let's bring in our special guest. First, you'll recognize him from another huge case here on Court TV, an attorney who specializes in defamation cases, represented Johnny Depp in his case against Amber Heard. Ben Chu is joining us. Also with us, the attorney representing Stephen Smith's family and the host of the very popular Cup of Justice podcast, Eric Bland, is with us. And the creator of the Murdock Family Murders Impact of Influence podcast. He's been covering the Murdocks since the very beginning. Matt Harris is joining us. Great to see everyone tonight. Eric, I'll begin with you. What do you believe the impact of this will be, of Buster Murdock going after these folks for defamation, suing them for what he alleges how they've damaged him and his reputation related to the Stephen Smith case?
Well, you know, I've often told you that just because you can bring a lawsuit doesn't mean you should. And I think there could be some unintended consequences by him bringing this lawsuit. One of those is, this is a civil case, so the discovery can be done and will be done by the opposing party. And they will defend this case vigorously, zealously. They will take depositions of everybody in Buster's life, his friends, his family, before they take Buster's deposition. Remember, Vinny, you know, in a criminal case, the state turns over the evidence to you. But in this type of case, this will just be a welcoming event for all the defendants because it's going to create content. The embers of the Murdaugh case were almost dying out, and this will breathe new oxygen into the Murdaugh matters. And you will see more documentaries come because of the civil discovery that's going to take place in this case. Remember, he's only answered 2 questions relative to Stephen Smith in connection with the Fox News documentary last September. He said, I didn't kill Stephen Smith and I didn't have a relationship with Stephen Smith. What was never asked of him was, do you have any information regarding Stephen Smith's death? And the discovery process for people who don't do it is very intrusive. It's proactive. His reputation is now at stake. And remember, he had to leave law school because of plagiarism allegations that he had cheated. So his reputation is at stake. And this is going to be a fertile ground for him to be deposed, for subpoenas to be sent out, for emails and text messages. Civil discovery is so personally intrusive. And I don't believe that at the end of the day that I think that this is going to be beneficial to him. I think it's going to be more beneficial to these defendants who are extremely well-heeled, have money to defend these lawsuits. They named Michael DeWitt to stay out of federal court. I think you're going to see some litigation over that he was named as a sham defendant, and in this case removed to federal court and not be in Hampton County. So it's breathed oxygen into the Murdaugh matters that I think we're dying.
Matt Harris, when you heard of this, were you shocked? Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, and I take a different angle than Eric does. I think it's possible. We're going down this path of, well, he has all these secrets. Well, isn't it possible that he is confident that he has nothing to hide? Why are we going right to it's going to backfire? Why are we going to, like in Eric's tweet, he's like, oh, did you ever have lunch with him? Did you ever get in his car with him? I'm like, is there an implication because he's gay you shouldn't be hanging out with him? I don't know what that is about. I think maybe he is confident that he did nothing wrong and he was railroaded. Isn't it possible that's the angle, not the angle that Eric says with like, oh, all these secrets are going to come out that he has? Let's give the guy a break. The guy's been through some crap. Maybe he is very confident that he had nothing to do with the Stephen Smith case, and he's tired of hearing people drag his name through the mud.
Let me do this. I want to get
I didn't say he had anything
Go
to
ahead,
do with
Eric.
the case. I didn't say he had anything to do with the case. I said he may have information, but I'm not the one, Matt, who put his name in 6 or 8 different spots all over the South Carolina Highway Patrol investigative file that was released in 2021. Those were his friends who put him in the bullseye.
I mean, you might have know something I don't know, but I'm just saying one of the things you wrote in your tweet was, when did you have lunch with him? Did you ever have lunch with him? Did you ever in his car with him? I mean, who cares? I mean, you can't be friends with the dude? I mean, I don't understand the implication.
Let me do this. I want to get into some more specifics here for you, Ben Chu, about these allegations and get your take on how you think this may play out. Let's begin with the Murdock murder's deadly dynasty. The plaintiff is alluded to a number of times as the murderer of Stephen Smith. In Low Country, these are the allegations. In Low Country, the Murdock dynasty, the allegation is that the series publishes false statements that suggest the plaintiff murdered Stephen Smith by striking him with a baseball bat. A sequence in the show accuses the plaintiff of killing Stephen Smith because of his sexual identity and further insinuates that the plaintiff killed Stephen Smith in relation to a romantic relationship between the plaintiff and Smith. In Murdock Murders, The Southern Scandal, the allegation is that it depicts a young man with red hair carrying a baseball bat. The plaintiff has red hair, and it is readily ascertainable that the creators were depicting the plaintiff as the murderer of Stephen Smith. The series publishes statements such as, "Everyone keeps coming up to me and saying it was the Murdock boys," and listening to these statements, it is pretty clear Stephen's death is intertwined with the Murdocks. The series falsely contains statements that the plaintiff was engaged in a romantic relationship with Stephen Smith and that it was the plaintiff and maybe 2 other individuals who killed Stephen Smith. And one more. In Murdock Murders, The Southern Scandal, DeWitt stated, we were hearing all of these rumors about a possible connection. There is some truth to it. We could not put the Murdock name in the story unless we wanted to face lawsuits. We said a prominent, well-known family was rumored to be involved. Everyone knew who we were talking about. All right, I gave you some stuff to think about here, Ben. What are your thoughts about suing Warner Brothers, Warner Media, Netflix, Gannett, these big companies down there in the Low Country for defamation?
Well, I agree that Buster is biting off. He's fighting some well-heeled clients, and he will have the burden of proof on all the elements of a defamation claim, which are extremely difficult to prove, especially when he may have to meet the very high standard of actual malice. One thing he doesn't have to worry about, however, is the fact that some of these defendants may not have explicitly mentioned his name. That doesn't really matter. This will be a defamation by implication. As you suggested, Vinny, everybody who watches knew who they were referring to. And just by depicting somebody with fiery red hair, you can see it's very clear to anybody familiar with the story that they're referring to him. So I don't think he's going to have to worry about that. But he will have the burden of proof, and he's going to have to basically prove the negative, that he is not a murderer. This is also defamation per se because he's been accused of a heinous crime, so damages will be presumed. But he still has to meet every element other than damages. So it's going to be tough.
It's going to be a tough, I suppose, pretty long process that is just beginning, unless there's a settlement. It could always be a quick settlement. We've seen those also. Ben Chu, thank you so much for giving us your insight. It was amazing how we took our two biggest trials and brought them together in one segment tonight. Murdock and Johnny Depp all together. Eric and Matt are going to stay with us. When we come back, we are going to take you back to the scene and try to get a better understanding of what happened to Stephen Smith and who's responsible.
Wednesday.
The ultimate betrayals.
Back-to-back episodes of Accomplice to Murder.
Spell was broken when the handcuffs went click. Friends and family turning on each other.
What he was willing to do for $1 million.
But just who is the puppet?
She was a master manipulator.
And who's pulling the strings?
An Accomplice to Murder marathon. Starting Wednesday, noon, 11 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Somebody was there. It was more than one person that done this. And somebody knows. And they set him up on that road to make it look like a hit and run. I was so happy when they reopened the case, and that gave me hope, and he wasn't under the rock anymore. And with all this stuff going on, you know, he gets more attention now. But we really don't want the attention. We just want the answers.
And that's, when you look at, you know, the whole saga with the Murdock family murders, it was because of that spotlight that finally this case got the attention that it deserved. Let's bring back in our guests, Eric Bland, the attorney representing Sandy Smith, and Matt Harris, host of the Murdock podcast, Impact of Influence. Eric, where are we right now in terms of this investigation and getting the answer for Sandy Smith?
I have frequent conversations with Chief Mark Keel, who's the head of our SLED, South Carolina Law Enforcement Division in our state. And I get some information, but obviously he doesn't share the status of the investigation. But I feel like that they're kind of at a standstill. There's, I'm told, 6 people that have relevant information, but you can't make people talk. They can be brought before a grand jury. They can be immunized, but if somebody doesn't want to talk, they don't have to. And what some people who are not lawyers don't understand is the civil process of discovery is so broad. It's not you can only discover relevant evidence. You have to discover evidence that ultimately could lead to admissible evidence. And so one of the things is that there was a discovery during the Murdaugh murders investigation in July of 2021, which caused SLED to reopen the investigation into Stephen's case. What was that information? What was that evidence? We don't know. Was it a connection to the Murdaughs? We don't know. But it was something strong enough that Chief Keel told me that the SLED now believes that he was not killed by a hit and run, but it actually was a homicide. Now, a homicide doesn't mean a murder, but it does mean something that it could have been a killing where somebody was grossly negligent, then they fled the scene. The problem with this discovery, and Matt and I have a disagreement on this, is it's going to go deep into the Murdaugh family, whether it's a relationship that Buster had with Stephen that was a friendly relationship. That is certainly fine. But does Alex have information regarding Stephen's murder? There's allegations that Alex showed up at the scene the next morning. There's allegations that Alex's brother Randy showed up at the accident scene.
Do you think they could be deposed as well?
The day after with her? Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no fence post when it comes to this type of discovery. Yes. I mean, you can't go on a major fishing major fishing type of thing, but you can broad-based discovery. The court, if you can imagine, it's a funnel. And what happens is you get all the discovery that you do during the discovery phase, and then it funnels down to what's ultimately admissible. And it's much broader than what takes place in a criminal case. And the unintended consequences that I talked about is maybe it's not going to come back and have blowback against Buster, but it could have blowback against others because they're going to take depositions days on end. Remember, there's 9 defendants, Vinny and Matt, that each have the right to depose each individual and ask questions. So Buster is going to have to answer a lot of questions about his reputation, law school, different things, his underage drinking, the underage drinking that may have been done on the property, the fact that he gave his card to Paul. All these different things goes into the cake mix of his reputation. And I'm not sure if I was his lawyer, I'm not sure I would have advised him to do this. I do know that this case has been talked about for a couple of years of being brought. I do know that he was shopping around several lawyers, prominent lawyers, and he got a good lawyer. Sean Kent, no question, is a reputable lawyer. But these kind of cases do have a chance of spinning out of control, and that's what could happen here. And it is definitely going to revive the whole Murdaugh matters to the delight of all these defendants who, by the way, Vinny, have more money than God to defend these type of cases.
Matt, do you think we're ever going to get the answer as to what happened to Stephen Smith and who's responsible?
First of all, EB's been great at keeping this story alive and working to try to get to put the pressure on to get the answer. Dude, that's awesome that he's been doing that. I still think that people will talk. I think eventually, and maybe when you say there's blowback or whatever, it might be positive blowback in the sense that somebody in a deposition says something that leads to finding out what happened to Stephen Smith. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a negative blowback to Buster. And I still believe that the answer will come to fruition. The sunlight will hit it eventually, with people staying on top of this. And again, the depositions, maybe they'll hurt somebody else, but if Buster truly believes that he had nothing to do with it and he feels like he's being wronged, you can't hide when you're a big guy with the name Murdock and red hair, right?
And the other part of the big pockets is the people he's suing have big pockets. So we'll see how it all plays out. Eric and Matt are staying with us. When we come back, we will return to the scene.
And by doing that Freedom of Information Act, I have copies of like the whole investigation, the autopsy, and then I read it and it made no sense. And then I got the photos and I seen how badly he was beaten. That's not a car.
Stephen Smith's mother looking for an answer as to what happened to her son. Now, former Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, along with forensics expert Dr. Kenny Kinsey, take us back right now to the scene of Stephen's death.
I know that you've also read the file. Now that we're here on location, what's standing out to you?
Ms. Chanley, I noticed some features in the landscape that have remained constant in the last 7 or 8 years. A lot has changed, the dynamics of the highway, the pavement, some of the paint, but I can also isolate several features that helps me put the location down to a pinpoint. Maybe not a point of origin, but at least an area of origin where Mr. Smith's body was located.
And that's key to kind of understand maybe what happened, you know, how his body was positioned at the time that those first responders arrived here at the scene, right?
It is. See that one point right here?
Right.
And then the box extends over the actual line. So head this direction, feet that direction.
Feet that direction.
Yes, ma'am.
Right here, literally on the center line, it looks like.
Yeah, he did straddle the center line. I don't know the exact position because I haven't seen the exact photos, but somewhere in this area.
What does the position here in the middle on the center line tell you?
Well, Ms. Chanley, it's so many different ways, and I don't want to. I don't want to state a method because I really don't know that part. It does look a little odd to me, the lack of damage to Mr. Smith's clothing. I mean, I've I'm not a trooper. I haven't ever been a trooper, but I have assisted on a number of pedestrian versus vehicle accidents. And I don't know that I've ever seen clothing in that pristine a condition from a vehicle versus pedestrian accident. And the positioning on the middle line, I mean, at bare minimum, I don't think a person could mistakenly hit someone and not know they hit someone.
There is a lot of, you can see kind of far down in this direction, that there's a slight curve here in the road. Does that indicate anything or would affect anything?
There is, but in the original photographs and right now, they keep the shoulder cut back. So you still got plenty of field of view. You may not get it in the highway, you know, from a distance, but you should still see something moving. And those headlights are going to light it up for several hundred feet.
The lack of physical evidence here at the scene, talk to me about that.
Well, typically, Ms. Chanley, you're going to have car parts, plastic, glass. You know, those lenses, they don't hold up to a lot of impact. And the ones that I have worked that were intentional, and also the ones I've assisted highway patrol with, I believe there's always been debris.
Right, like
to the point,
you would see something, this is not obviously from a car, but just maybe the bumper or paint.
Oh,
or
exactly.
glass. There's no evidence really of swerving, right, from what you see in those photos?
In none of the photos I've seen, Chanley, when you slam on brakes, you're going to leave tire material on the pavement. It's going to show definitely the tire span, the width of that vehicle. Sometimes if you stop fast enough, it's going to leave a direct impression in that rubber. If you can find that at a crime scene,
right,
and you can find a suspect tire, a lot of times you can use those characteristics to include or exclude that tire.
None of that's here on the scene.
And it's probably changed in 8 years. If that vehicle is still around, of course, we change our shoes. Well, you have to change your car tires too.
Good
so
point.
it may be knowledge, some person's knowledge that they have to depend on. Maybe they'll look at it with another lens from a different direction. Let me look at it as this, and if it was actual car versus pedestrian, let's work till we get to that answer instead of maybe starting with that answer. The key here is someone knows. Someone knows, because people can't be quiet, and somebody knows and they're scared to come forward for whatever reason, but somebody knows, and the Smith family deserves answers.
So true. I mean, nothing ever really screamed out to me, you know, hit and run here. First of all, notice Chanley and Dr. Kinsey are doing this in the middle of the road and there's no cars coming by. We're in rural South Carolina. All right, let's bring back in our guests. Smith family attorney Eric Bland and podcaster Matt Harris still with me. And joining us now from Columbia, South Carolina, former medical examiner, retired forensic pathologist Dr. Michelle Dupree is with us. Great to see you, Dr. Dupree. So we now know that this was intentional, according to investigators. It's a homicide, right? That's what they're saying. It wasn't an accident. The body was exhumed. You played a large role in all of this. What are your thoughts tonight as we're still sitting here? Now we're talking about the case again because of these lawsuits, but still waiting for an answer.
Well, Vinny, actually, I'm afraid I have a little bit different opinion. I do think that the medical, scientific, and forensic evidence, to me, in my mind, really isn't there to make this into an intentional homicide. I really think that this was a horrible, tragic accident. I think that something on a vehicle, not the vehicle itself, but perhaps a ladder, a hook, I don't know, a large side view mirror or something struck Stephen. I believe that he actually passed away exactly where he was found. The medical evidence certainly suggests that. So I don't really think that this is an intentional homicide. I think that it became a crime when the person or persons in the vehicle did not stop and left the scene of that accident. And when they found out, perhaps later, they did not report it.
Let me ask you this, though. Like on that country road, right? You would hear or see, especially at night, it's so quiet, a vehicle coming. And he's walking and remains in the middle of the street. There's no tire tracks. There's no debris from the car. What are your thoughts about that part of it?
I think, and again, this is just, supposition on my part, but I believe that he was probably walking near the middle of the road because it was dark. I believe that he was out of gas. Perhaps he was going to try and flag down a vehicle that came, but the vehicle that I believe came was traveling at a very high rate of speed, and he didn't realize or have time to get out of the way, and the vehicle would have, I don't think even a stunt person, I don't believe, could have maneuvered the vehicle so that something on it hit him rather than the vehicle itself. This is why we don't see any debris. There was nothing on the vehicle like the headlight or tail light or anything like that actually hit him, and that's why there is no debris there. But something else, perhaps like a ladder or hook, that is what I believe hit him and knocked him down.
So, Matt Harris...
He had no other injuries.
Absolutely. You are in it, and you observed it, and you did the work. Matt, let me ask you, do you think, and again, we're trying to figure out, like, why wouldn't someone stop? Why would they continue? And the obvious answer is always, oh, you could be young and you could be drinking, and you're just going to get out of there, which tells me that people know, someone knows something, yet all these years, no one has said anything. Why is that?
Well, like you said, and I think that if it happened, that person who, let's say they were even alone, they're probably going to tell somebody. The odds of you keeping that to yourself the whole time are pretty slim. But the fact that that circle of who knows has remained so tight in a small town like that is truly amazing. And horrible. But I think that it's not surprising that if these were young people, they'd be like, oh crap, my life is ruined. I've got to make this split decision not to tell. And then you don't tell one day, you don't tell a week, and then you don't tell 2 weeks. Makes it harder to say 2 months later. Because then people are like, what the heck, dude? Why didn't you, or Mrs., why didn't you tell? So it becomes further and further and further out from the incident that it's harder to come clean because you know the ramifications and the whole world, and especially that community, you are an evil person, even though you may not be an evil person. You might be a person who made a mistake. But now you are totally a pariah.
So, Eric, many times we've seen civil cases that lead to criminal charges in some way. You've been talking a lot about this discovery process. People will be compelled to talk now. Do you think that maybe the answer to who is responsible comes in some way, directly or indirectly, from this discovery process?
I do, and I think Matt may be onto something, which is this case could be beneficial to Buster, but the happiest person that this case was brought is Sandy Smith, because this is going to give her some answers that she may not otherwise have gotten, because people don't have to talk. In the civil cases, they are going to have to speak, and those 6 people, which SLED says do have information, are either going to have to speak or actually take the Fifth Amendment privilege in a deposition, which creates negative inferences. So Sandy Smith is the happiest person on earth that Buster filed this lawsuit, because it's over the death of her son. It could end up being a financial benefit to Buster Murdaugh, but it's going to definitely yield some information, more information than we have today. So from our standpoint, we're very satisfied that he brought this lawsuit, because the discovery process is so factually, intensively intrusive. It's a full body medical exam if you haven't been through it.
Dr. Michelle Dupree, do you think you'll be deposed?
I have no idea.
How much information do you have that you think could be informative to all the parties involved in this case?
I think quite a bit. I was the one who helped exhume the body. I was at the autopsy, attended every bit of that. So yes, I mean, I saw it firsthand.
Eric, I think she's going to be deposed. What do you think?
Oh, I agree.
I agree. So get ready.
I agree.
Great to see everyone tonight on the program. It's kind of like getting everyone back together. Hopefully the next time we do this, we have an answer for Sandy Smith. I think that's what everyone is hoping for. But great to see you, Eric Bland, Cup of Justice, Matt Harris, Impact of Influence, and Dr. Michelle Dupree, expert of experts. Thank you all so much.